but I think it's becoming much more common um, to look at all of that enormous amount of data that is generated by your workforce and do something with it. So every day, if you think about your employees, everything they're doing, their keystroke, and, it can pass into the privacy realm, but especially things that they do in terms of surveys and interviews and focus groups. And that's where Google really mastered it. They didn't so much uh, suck up that data that's sort of just out there in the ether and do things with it. They're starting to do things like that. But really what they did was they talked to people. They went out and spoke to thousands of employees. They used engagement surveys. They mapped uh, what a supervisor or a frontline manager looked like when they entered the job, how they were rated in 360-degree reviews by their uh, subordinates, their peers, and so on. And they figured out in a project called Oxygen, which lasted 4 or 5 years, and analyzed massive amounts of data, exact comprises an effective frontline manager at Google. And contrary to what they had believed, which was, a world-class software designer needs to be supervised by a universe class, or designer. No, that was one of the least important things. The most important uh, skill sets for frontline managers revolved around things like empathy. So coaching, being able to sit down and have conversations. They also stripped their managers and supervisors of all coercive power. So they weren't allowed to say who was going to be on their team. They weren't allowed to hire anybody. They weren't allowed to fire anybody. They weren't allowed to promote anybody. They were barely allowed to use tangible incentives. They could use recognition because they wanted that relationship between frontline manager and employee not to be fraught with hierarchy. And they did that all through data. And we're seeing this more and more. I started with all this ambient data that's coming up because there's a company in Waterloo who does this extremely well. And I don't know if you've heard of Click Health, but they are absolute pioneers in determining and tweaking ways to maximize the performance of the workforce. They've written an excellent book that name escapes here and now, but an excellent book that I read about 5 years ago, and I've quoted ever since,